Hello, everybody. Today is Friday, November 14th. Welcome to another day of Canuck News. My name is Miloš Krajšnik, and I will be covering one very important story, I believe, today. And it's the CSIS director. I came out with a number of comments regarding spying from China and Russia, as well as potential spying on the upcoming secession or influencing the upcoming secession elections from Alberta and Quebec. And I really wanted to pinpoint on this story quite a bit because I think that it's very important. Espionage is it's honestly a division in government that can really propel and demote a national status on the world stage, right? So the UK, for instance, when they lost their military might, because obviously, God save the king, we're still a part of the Commonwealth, and we're still under that umbrella, guys. But obviously, Great Britain used to be a global superpower, or the global superpower, unmatched. And it had hands down the strongest navy the world's ever seen for a very long time, right? And right around after World War II, because of extremely depleted resources, the U.S. became the global superpower essentially, or one of, going head to head with the Soviet Union, which was a continental superpower in Europe and Asia. But how the UK got out of all of this was by building up a very strong spy network. So MI6 has become really the breadbasket for projecting British power globally, right? And obviously you have to have a good spy network to counter other spies and all that. Spy games are a very interesting business. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because it just seems like more finger pointing, to be honest, right? Because there's a lot going on the global stage. Obviously, espionage is a big thing that goes on. And so this article or this story has been covered not only by the Globe and Mail, but also by CTV and CBC, as you can see up there. I'm going to jump into the CTV one after because there's a quick snippet of Dan Rogers here talking. He's the director head of CSIS. But quickly, just to go through what the article claims, it says China and Russia continue to target Canada for sensitive government and private sector intelligence and high-tech goods, and are seeking to gain a strategic foothold in the Arctic, the country's spy agency head said this Thursday. The warning about China was laid out as Prime Minister Mark Carney has embarked on a diplomatic effort to repair relations with Beijing, including a planned trip to the country next year at the invitation of President Xi Jinping. Chinese spies have tried to recruit Canadians with information and military expertise, Dan Rogers, director of Canadian Security Intelligence Service, said in his annual speech on threats to Canada. Mr. Rogers also warned that Russia and China have a significant intelligence interest in Canada's Arctic. Okay, so these first couple sentences are really kind of, let's say, jam-packed with a bunch of information. Why China and Russia would want to target Canadian private sector intelligence? It's for a number of reasons. You really get to understand, if you have access to that kind of information, you can really understand what kind of, let's say, intimate problems citizens are going through, right? So what problems Canadian citizens are going through, financial, any kind really, because everything's connected to the internet, right? High-tech goods, I don't know, Canada's not really at the forefront of producing high-tech stuff. Usually we just kind of bring it in either from the US or from Europe. Kind of touched on that yesterday because now we're trying to look at producing Swedish Gripen planes instead of producing something of our own. in the Arctic. I've touched on the Arctic several times in Canada's lack of direction in the Arctic. And we currently don't have much going on in the Arctic either, right? But the Arctic is a very key thing, especially because the ice caps are melting. It's really allowing for forward-thinking moves to be made, and I'm going to touch on that later on in this segment. So it says it's not a surprise that CSIS has observed both cyber and non-cyber intelligence collection efforts targeting both governments and private sector in the region. CSIS director also singled out Moscow for using illicit procurement schemes to purchase Canadian technology for Russia's war against Ukraine. So honestly, I just think this is I just think this is so funny. So they're always trying to pinpoint Russia for trying to steal tech for Ukrainian war efforts against Ukraine, as if Ukraine was more technologically advanced than Russia going into this thing. Like, Russia right now is the only country that has serial line production hypersonic missiles. It's the only country. Okay? Like, take that guy. The US doesn't have battle-tested hypersonic missiles. The US doesn't have hypersonic missiles in its arsenal, let alone serial production. Russia has 5 that have been tested on the Ukrainian battlefronts. The reason why I'm saying this is not to talk up Russia, but just to kind of give you like an idea of why would Russia be stealing technology from Canada in its war effort in Ukraine. That's like that story where Russians are out of semiconductor chips. They're pulling them out of washing machines and they're putting them inside of missiles to be able to use these like cruise missiles and stuff like that. So that sentence is a bunch of baloney, right? It's a bunch of baloney. It's a bunch of propaganda to really just give Russia even a worse name that it already has in the media, right? But are there spy games? There's absolutely spy games. The U.S. sends submarines on the coastlines of Russia and China all the time, and they're all over the world. Russia does the same thing. That is 100% normal. That's nothing to do. And of course, China does the same thing. So much so that I need to bring you guys back in history a little bit, because there was a massive scandal that happened a couple of years back when Donald Trump was in his first term, if you guys remember, and Justin Trudeau. Donnie put in the screws. He put the screws into our boy Justin here, into blackface Justin, and had him arrest Huawei's CEO. Why? Why? Because Donnie said Canada cannot have Chinese 5G networks installed. Why? Because it's a national security risk, not only to Canada, but to the United States of America as well. Because all of our information, our commerce, it's a two-way street. If Canada had integrated China's 5G network, they would gain access into the U.S. market, into some of the U.S. private sector. Obviously, because everything that's going through the network is filed, it's trackable, and you don't know what the Chinese can do in the back end. That's why there's this whole TikTok thing going on in the U.S., because the U.S. doesn't want China having that kind of access to personal information to U.S. citizens. So we can all, like Donnie or not, we can all give Donnie a big round of applause and a big thank you for getting the Chinese out of building 5G infrastructure, telecommunications infrastructure in Canada. Thank you, Donald Trump. Because obviously Justin Trudeau would have installed this and we would have been a complete surveillance state of China. And we would have just been going around our days as if nothing is going on, and China would just be spying on us. And so, I mean, this is a newer article. Canada has officially now banned China's Huawei technologies from installing equipment in 5G network towers. So Canada had been the only member of the Five Eyes intelligence pooling alliance not to bar or restrict the use of equipment. Yeah. So the U.S. put the screws on all of the other Five Eyes. Canada was the only one that didn't do it, and then they had to do it. And obviously, because we're so interconnected that anything that's going on in Canada, you can gain insights into what's going on in the U.S. because our economies are very, very much interconnected. You guys know this. I said it in an earlier episode that I did. I think it was the first one actually. That 97% of our crude oil that we extract goes down south. Our trade is like it's over $1 billion a day with the U.S. cross-border trade, and so this is from 2018. Trump's remarks could stymie U.S. extradition of Huawei CFO from Canada. So we literally arrested a person, the CFO of Huawei, under the direction of Donald Trump, to not have this happen. And then now you have CSIS's head saying, hey, the Chinese might be spying on us, but they literally, under the same government, a couple years earlier, we almost systematically instilled a way for them to continually spy on us. Like systematically spy on everybody and everything. The military, healthcare, people, everything. The insurance companies, the banks, everything would have been under surveillance under Justin Trudeau. That's treason, just so you guys know. That is treason. So I wanna listen in on what Dan Rogers says here.
Sandy, this is the first time CSIS has ever held a news conference like this. Dan Rogers, who took over the helm of the agency last October, began by highlighting increased radicalization among minors. 1 in 10 CSIS terrorism investigations now involves someone under the age of 18. Now, when it comes to foreign interference, Rogers revealed that CSIS had redirected resources to counter Iranian agents, and he also detailed attempts by Russians to use European companies as fronts. But at a time when the federal government is trying to normalize relations with China and India to increase trade, Rogers devoted less time to explaining the current threats from those two countries. So reporters asked him why.
I would say that Canada is not going to be shy, or at least CSIS isn't going to be shy to come public with information when it's in Canada's national interest to do that and when it's in our national security interests. But today I gave examples that were new and things that Canadians hadn't heard before.
Okay, and Judy, did the director have anything to say about the challenges posed by the current U.S. administration?
You know, Sandy, given the comments by U.S. President Donald Trump about annexing Canada and the current trade war, you would think that Don Rogers would have addressed it in his official speech, but it wasn't. Rogers said that the relationship between Canada's spy agency and its American counterparts remains strong and that it benefits both countries to continue sharing information despite the change in administration. Sandy.
Okay, Judy, as always, thank you so much.
So this guy basically didn't say much, right?
Canada held its 45th.
Yeah, you know, I'm forthcoming when it comes to what's going on in Canada. Don't worry about it. But meanwhile, you know, everything that we do is tied to the U.S. And like, what a stupid question. You know, we talked about foreign interference. Did we talk about Donald Trump wanting to make Canada the 51st state? Guys, there's a geopolitical rat race going on right now. Things are getting extremely radicalized on the global stage, and there are trade blocks that are being created. Okay, and I kind of understand Donald Trump, and it's not like some imperialistic ambition. It's just we don't have time for this shit. You know, it would just be easier if you guys did this, because then we could actually project national interests into the north a lot faster, because it would be a federal issue now and not dealing with another government, right? And so that's really what that comes in. Iran, Iran, Israel just killed a whole bunch of Iranian generals using a remote control. What are we talking about? Iran's not a threat to anybody, man. But I want to show you guys why the Arctic is important, okay? And so, where the trouble lies, right? So this is the Arctic, right? And this is why this annexation of Greenland is happening, because this is Greenland, this is Alaska, this is Russia, this is China, right? Japan also over here. But what do you have over here? You have projection into Europe, right? So the Arctic is key for power projection, pressure on Russia from the north, pressure on China from the north, potentially probably even on Europe, to be honest, to keep them in line. But also for trade, because if you can send goods through the Northwest Passage up California's coast, or up through the Hudson Bay, take the St. Lawrence, go through here, or up the Hudson Bay. Probably the St. Lawrence makes more sense, and you end up in Europe. You can easily trade in Europe. Okay, let me give you a quick. Let's have a quick look at this. Where's this? Here we go. Measure distance. So if we're going up to St. Lawrence here, so this is Southern Ontario. All right. We go up to St. Lawrence, to Newfoundland, to Iceland. You're in Germany in 6,000 kilometers, basically. Okay, guys, 6,500 kilometers. You're in Germany. From Germany up the north, you can connect to the Danube pretty quickly, and the Danube connects to the Black Sea, and the Black Sea opens up African markets. Okay, why the Russians and what the Chinese and the Russians want to do is the exact same thing. Look at this. Where's this thing? Here we go. The measuring tool. That's what I need. Oh, there we go. Beijing is around here. So if you go like this, cut through here, up Russia's north, right? You can connect directly into Europe via waterways, right? So it's a faster route. Instead of you having to go down it. So right now, and it's the other important thing is you're going across one border into Europe from the north, directly into Germany. You're using one border, you're using Russia, right? An ally who's gonna clear up all the ice up here for you to get in trade with Scandinavia or Germany or wherever, right? Otherwise, what you have to do right now, which brings you under a lot more political pressure from various parties, like India, for instance, you have to go down here through the East China Sea. You're going through Taiwan, Vietnam, Malaysia. So this is another trade choke point. It's the Bay of Venturia, I think, something like that. It's a major choke point. So they go across here, they go through here, they go up here, they cut through here. So you're looking at Yemen now, another major choke point for, we all know what goes on with Yemen all the time. You have to go up the Suez Canal. All right, guys, you have to go up the Suez Canal, another choke point. Another major trade bottleneck that happens. that can easily be clogged. For you to get into the Mediterranean, to be able to sell to Italy, to go to Barcelona or wherever, you're literally saving half the travel time by going north. Not only are you saving half the travel time, there's also oil in the north. The Arctic is such a key strategic place for not only the US to be, Canada, Russia, but also China, as well as Europe. But the Europeans are completely useless. They're incapable of strategic thinking. And so that's why the Europeans aren't capable of doing anything. If they were, they'd be pushing up north, but they're not. This is why this is key, and this is why Dan Rogers' statements are hilarious. He also, in the CBC article, says, there's braces for possible foreign interference as Alberta and Quebec eye sovereignty. Sure, there's probably going to be some foreign interference, but I think that the federal government did a good job of wanting to make these people break away, right? And so now we have these mining projects that are happening to try and keep Alberta from splitting away. So there's literally a mining project, the LNG stuff that Carney's pushing, to keep Alberta appeased so that it doesn't try a referendum movement. That's what's going on, guys. There's a much wider picture to all of this that we really need to have a look at and that we really need to understand. That's all for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. That's how it goes. Stay informed, stay curious, and God bless Canada.
This is Canada. Maple syrup and like Captain say, kick your ass all hockey season.